Hi, and welcome to Historical Influence. Here, we explore amazing stories of people and events that shaped our history. Join us to learn, discover, and get inspired by the past in a fun and engaging way. The French Revolution was a pivotal period of societal and political transformation in France that unfolded between 1789 and 1799. This watershed event in world history did not just alter France's political landscape, it helped shape modern democracies by demonstrating the power inherent in the will of the people. The revolution uprooted centuries-old institutions like the absolute monarchy and the feudal system. Its ideas are considered fundamental principles of liberal democracy, and its values of liberty, equality, and fraternity remain central to modern political discourse. The revolution's impact was profound, ending feudalism, advancing individual freedoms, and spreading democratic ideals across Europe and the world. Triggered by a combination of social, political, and economic crises that the existing regime, the Ancien regime, could not manage, this decade of turmoil would permanently change the course of history. As the 18th century neared its end, France was a kingdom on the verge of bankruptcy. The nation's financial crisis stemmed from multiple factors, including costly involvement in the American Revolution, extravagant spending by King Louis XVI and his court, and a deeply inefficient and unfair tax system. While the state's revenues failed to keep pace with expenditures, the tax burden fell disproportionately on the lower classes, as the nobility and clergy enjoyed numerous exemptions. Attempts at financial reform, such as a universal land tax proposed by Comptroller General Calonne in 1786, were consistently blocked by the regional parliaments, which were judicial bodies controlled by the nobility. Compounding the financial woes was widespread social distress. France's population had grown significantly, but prosperity was limited to the middle and upper classes, while peasants and wage laborers saw their living standards fall. A series of poor harvests, drought, and cattle disease in the late 1780s caused bread prices to skyrocket, fueling unrest among the urban poor and peasantry. People expressed their desperation through riots, looting, and strikes against a regime that imposed heavy taxes but offered no relief. Amid this growing crisis, King Louis XVI proved indecisive, often backing down from necessary reforms when faced with opposition from conservative elites. To address the financial crisis and forestall an aristocratic revolt, King Louis XVI summoned the Estates General for May 5, 1789, the first time the assembly had met since 1614. This body represented the three estates of French society: the clergy, First Estate; the nobility, Second Estate; and the common people, the Third Estate. However, the structure of the Estates General was outdated. By 1789, the Third Estate represented 98% of the population, but could be easily outvoted by the first two estates, which represented less than 5% combined. Ahead of the meeting, the Third Estate began demanding equal representation and voting by head rather than by status. When the Estates General convened at Versailles, this procedural debate quickly overshadowed the original purpose of the meeting. With negotiations stalled, the delegates of the Third Estate took a revolutionary step on June 17, 1789. They declared themselves the National Assembly. 3 days later, finding their usual meeting hall locked, they gathered in a nearby indoor tennis court and took the tennis court oath, vowing not to disband until a new constitution was written. This act of defiance marked a direct challenge to the king's authority. As the newly formed National Assembly defied the king, fear and violence gripped Paris. Rumors of an impending military coup circulated, panicking the citizens. This tension culminated on July 14, 1789, when Parisian rioters stormed the Bastille, a medieval fortress used as a prison to seize weapons and gunpowder. The fall of the Bastille, a potent symbol of the Ancien regime, is widely considered the start of the French Revolution and is now commemorated as France's national holiday. The revolutionary fervor quickly spread from Paris to the countryside. Peasants, revolting against years of exploitation, looted and burned the homes of tax collectors and landlords in a period known as the Great Fear, or La Grande Peur. This agrarian insurrection accelerated the exodus of nobility from the country and pushed the National Assembly to take radical action. On August 4, 1789, the Assembly issued the August Decrees, which abolished feudalism, church tithes, and the special privileges of the nobility and clergy, effectively signing the death certificate of the old order.
Following the abolition of feudal privileges, the National Assembly laid the groundwork for a new society. On August 26, 1789, it adopted the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, a foundational document inspired by Enlightenment ideals. It proclaimed a commitment to equal opportunity, freedom of speech, and popular sovereignty, replacing the old system with one based on representative government. However, creating a new constitution proved challenging. For months, the Assembly debated the future political structure of France, including the king's role and authority. Meanwhile, the revolution caused a massive shift of power from the Catholic Church to the state. In November 1789, all church property was confiscated, and the 1790 Civil Constitution of the Clergy made priests and bishops employees of the state, a move that deeply divided French society. The first written constitution was finally adopted on September 3, 1791, establishing a constitutional monarchy that granted the king veto power. This compromise angered radicals like Maximilien Robespierre, who advocated for a more republican government.
The new constitutional monarchy was fraught with division and suspicion. The king's authority was severely weakened, especially after his failed attempt to flee the country in June 1791, known as the Flight to Varennes. This event shattered public trust and made it clear Louis XVI was not committed to the revolution. In April 1792, the Legislative Assembly declared war on Austria and Prussia, hoping to spread revolutionary ideals and eliminate threats from French émigrés abroad. However, a series of military defeats heightened political tensions in Paris. The crisis reached a boiling point on August 10, 1792, when a group of insurgents, led by extremist Jacobins, attacked the Tuileries Palace and arrested the king. This insurrection effectively suspended the monarchy. In the aftermath, the Legislative Assembly was replaced by the National Convention, which on September 22, 1792, abolished the monarchy and proclaimed the French First Republic. The birth of the Republic ushered in the most violent phase of the revolution. The National Convention was deeply divided between the moderate Girondins and the radical Montagnards, led by figures like Robespierre, Danton, and Marat. The new republic was immediately put on trial with the fate of the former king. On January 21, 1793, Louis XVI was executed by guillotine for high treason, an act that sent shockwaves across Europe and led to war with a coalition of European powers. His wife, Marie Antoinette, met the same fate 9 months later. The external war, coupled with internal uprisings in regions like the Vendée, pushed the revolution toward extremism. In June 1793, the radical Jacobins, backed by the Parisian sans-culottes, seized control of the National Convention from the Girondins. They established the powerful Committee of Public Safety, which became the de facto executive government, and suspended the newly drafted Democratic Constitution of 1793 indefinitely. The assassination of the radical journalist Marat in July 1793 by a Girondist sympathizer further fueled the Jacobins' resolve to eliminate all opposition. With the Jacobins in power, the Committee of Public Safety, dominated by Robespierre, unleashed the Reign of Terror, a 10-month period of state-sanctioned violence against perceived enemies of the revolution. Under the law of suspects, anyone deemed a counter-revolutionary could be arrested and executed with little recourse. The guillotine became the symbol of this brutal period. Over 17,000 people were officially tried and executed, and tens of thousands more died in prison or were summarily killed. The terror was not confined to Paris. Brutal repressions occurred in cities like Lyon and Nantes, where thousands were drowned in the Loire River. As the bloodshed escalated, the revolution began to devour its own. Factional infighting led Robespierre to orchestrate the execution of his rivals, including the radical Hébertists and moderates like Jules Danton. At the height of the terror, suspicion permeated every level of society, and no one was safe. By the summer of 1794, many in the National Convention began to fear Robespierre's unchecked power. His increasingly dictatorial behavior, combined with an improved military situation that made the extreme measures seem less necessary, created a coalition against him. On July 27, 1794, 9 Thermidor in the revolutionary calendar, his opponents in the convention rose against him, ordering his arrest. Robespierre and his allies attempted to rally support at the Hôtel de Ville, but were captured by troops loyal to the convention. On July 28, 1794, Robespierre was executed by guillotine, along with his key supporters like Saint-Just. His death marked the end of the Reign of Terror and the beginning of the Thermidorian reaction, a more moderate phase where the French people revolted against the excesses of the Jacobin regime. Surviving Girondins were reinstated and the Jacobin Club was closed.
The post-terror government, known as the Directory, was established in 1795 with a new constitution that created a 5-member executive and a bicameral legislature. However, the Directory's 4 years in power were marked by financial crises, political corruption, and chronic instability. The regime relied heavily on the military to maintain authority and suppress uprisings from both royalists and Jacobins. It was during this time that a young and successful general, Napoleon Bonaparte, rose to prominence. Having gained fame for his military victories in Italy and for suppressing a royalist revolt in Paris, Napoleon became a central figure in French politics. As public frustration with the Directory grew, Napoleon, with the help of allies like Sieyès, saw an opportunity. On November 9, 1799, 18 Brumaire, he staged a coup d'état, overthrowing the Directory and establishing the consulate, with himself as first consul. This event is widely considered the end of the French Revolution and the beginning of the Napoleonic era.
The French Revolution left a profound and lasting legacy on France and the world. It dismantled the Ancien Regime, permanently ending aristocratic privilege and establishing the principle of equality before the law. The revolution gave birth to the concept of the nation-state and powerfully stimulated nationalism across Europe. Its ideals of liberty, popular sovereignty, and human rights became a tradition, shaping modern republicanism and democratic movements globally. Though the revolution descended into violence and led to the rise of an authoritarian ruler in Napoleon, its core principles endured. The memory and ideals of 1789 continued to inspire political defiance and became a cornerstone of French identity, ensuring that the promise of a government by and for the people would remain an enduring option for generations to come. Share your thoughts in the comments.
And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that shaped our world.